goes with the job? A number of coal miners say it does, or at least say it did until they brought a lawsuit to stop it. The coal miners in this case are women. That's right, women coal miners who are suing a coal company for not protecting them from sexual harassment on the job. It all began here, just outside Wheeling, West Virginia, at Shoemaker, a coal mine owned and operated by the Consolidation Coal Company. Most of the miners who work here are men, but there are a few women. Generally, they work right alongside the men doing basically the same work. They are supposed to be treated as equals. That's the law. The fact is that often they are not treated equally, and like women who work in factories and offices, virtually every day they are subjected to some form of sexual harassment. It comes with the job.
There hasn't been one day gone by that I didn't go to sit down on my Jeep that someone didn't put their hand underneath my behind.
Before you sit down?
Right,
Yeah.
Before you sit down. They put their hand like that.
What do?
You pop back up and you holler at them. But you can't let them know how much it really bothers you inside because they'll just keep it up.
Bonnie Means is one of 8 women, present and former employees of Consol's Shoemaker mine, who are outraged by the persistent acts of sexual harassment they are forced to endure while they work in the mine. And they've decided something has to be done.
Down in the mines, they just feel that they have their own laws down there. They can do anything and everything.
I had a man attack me, threatened to rape me. And
In the mine?
yes, he grabbed me. It was where no one else was around. And he had a hold of me really tight, and he says, "I'm gonna rape you." Well, naturally, I was petrified, but I thought, well, I gotta try to get him to let go of me. So I said, well, let's not do it here, it's dirty. So he let go of me, and I ran from him. Well, I got in front of a whole crew and a boss, which was on the telephone at the time, and he grabbed me right by the behind. And I turned around and hit him. We was actually fighting on the ground, and I had to kick him really hard before he let me go. And the boss stood there and laughed, and so did the whole crew. They did nothing whatsoever to help me.
Women have worked in the mine since the mid-70s. Today, there are about 3,500 of them working underground. And though their numbers have increased in recent years, they still work in what is primarily a man's world. It is an environment that encourages harassment. Far underground, completely dark except for the light the miners wear on their hard hats, with no easy escape when a man decides to make sexual advances on a woman.
The sexual harassment takes all sorts of forms. The most common form is probably propositions, being made clear, especially by bosses, that you extend favors or life is going to be very rough on you.
Betty Jean Hall and Nancy Burnett are lawyers who work for the Coal Employment Project, an organization that tells women how to fight harassment both in the mines and in the courts.
The most blatant forms can go all the way from physical attacks, being taped up with electrician's tape like a mummy and left behind underground, to suggestive cigarette searches is another very common form. Under federal law, company officials can search every miner for cigarettes because that could create a very dangerous situation underground. But across the board, we started getting phone calls from women. Well, at first they didn't want to talk about it, but then when they did start talking about it, we realized that it was cropping up all over the country, that the women were facing very different kinds of cigarette searches than the men.
For example?
For example, they were being patted down in a very suggestive way.
For each of the last 4 years, the Coal Employment Project has held an annual conference for women miners. The latest was in Owensboro, Kentucky. It gives the miners a chance to compare notes on conditions in mines around the country. And to no one's surprise, there was a familiar theme that ran through the experiences of many of these women miners. Reports of sexual harassment, particularly by the company supervisors in the mines. The keynote speaker at the conference this year, Director of Kentucky's Human Rights Commission, Galen Martin.
I've heard dozens of horror stories about sexual harassment on the job. I've heard it in state government because it exists there, and I've heard it in businesses. I've heard it in the distillery industry in Kentucky and in the tobacco industry, and I've heard it in coal. But nowhere have I heard it worse than the horror stories I've heard about sexual harassment in the mines. Whatever the reasons are, you can and must continue to provide strategies that other women can use in keeping themselves from being victimized.
The strategy for the women of Console's shoemaker mine was to take their employer to court on charges the company permitted sexual harassment to take place. It all began over one particular incident, the discovery in the main building at the mine of a peephole between the women's washroom and a room to which only company supervisors had access. For years, company bosses had told the women about it. Sandy Dorsey can still remember what one supervisor had said to the other men in her presence.
But he would tell the guys, if you do a good job today, I'll let you come out after we're done, and while the girls are showering, I'll let you watch them. But we always thought they were kidding and stuff, and I'm sure they probably were, but we didn't know that there was really a hole there.
But there was a peephole, and Judy Simmons found it.
All I can say is I looked through it and I saw light on the other side of the hole. And I came out of the shower room, went into the small safety environmental room, and there was an anchor, a metal clamp anchor, and I just slipped right out of the hole, and you could see all the way through to the shower room.
Good, clear
the
view?
shower stalls is what you could see.
You could see a good, clear view?
Yes, you could.
They could see everything we were doing, our hygiene. They could see us taking our showers. They could see us. A lot of the girls would sit right in clear view of the hole. There was a little stoop to get into the shower room, and a lot of the girls would sit there with their legs wide open and shave their legs, take douches, you know, do and check your general parts.
Well, when you come out of the mine, you don't all come out at the same time. You're on different shifts. You come out at different times, and when you're in there by yourself, you'll do different things like you're at home because you feel secure there. I know I did.
There's things in that shower room that a lot of us did that we won't do in front of our husbands.
Right.
When the women realized that the hole had existed for 2 years, they came to the offices of Wheeling attorney Jim Bordis and instituted a legal suit against Consolidation Coal for $5.5 million, charging that since company supervisors had been peeking through the hole, the company should be responsible.
In order to really force a company to correct a wrong, oftentimes they have to be hit in a pocketbook to encourage them to change the wrongs that have been done to the people in the past so that these things won't occur in the future. And that is one of the basic reasons that we're asking for punitive damages in this case.
Well, what damage has the people caused to these women?
Well, the very basic damages are that the women have been caused to dress and undress and perform various acts of sexual female personal hygiene in front of these people who are looking at them against and without their permission. As a result of that, some of them have seen psychiatrists and psychologists. They've been embarrassed, they've been humiliated. They no longer feel safe in their workplace, and they no longer feel comfortable in going to work, not knowing who's looked at them through the hole in the shower room wall.
When you first mention this, especially to men, they'll snicker like a joke, you know, little peephole like a joke. Well, I'd usually ask them, how would you like if your wife had been stared at, or your daughter? And sometimes that'll make them think a little bit more seriously. But for people who don't think this is very serious or something, I'd like to ask the women out there, like my neighbors, I was talking to them, and I told her, I said, Ruth, I said, next time you step out of your shower or your tub, I said, and you're drying off, I said, and you're in that bathroom all by yourself and you're drying off, I said, just think, just stop and think. Just see how it would feel. Just keep doing it, but just imagine some big, fat, ugly man on the other side, some pervert, staring at you, and you don't know what he's thinking, you don't know what he's doing. And just, see, I don't have to imagine it. It happened to me. It happened to me for 2 years, and I didn't know it.
You know, many of you have husbands who work at the mines or who have friends who work at the mines. What do they say to all of this?
They think it's disgusting. My husband really thinks that anybody that's so low that has to look through a hole to see a woman shower. I mean, we're filthy dirty when we come out of the mine. You know, and all we do is shower and a few personal things. He just thinks it's awful. And, you know, a lot of the men probably that saw me were his friends.
One afternoon, shortly after they left the mine, we asked some of the men who work at Shoemaker what they thought of the women's charges of sexual harassment.
Men are men and women are women. I guess if you put them together, you're going to have it sooner or later.
The kind of things that the women tell us happen, that they're propositioned, some of them have even physically been attacked, that bosses will tell them to pretend to come to work and meet them at a motel. Do you think that happens?
Yeah, I can believe it. Just knowing some of the people the way I do, yeah.
Well, I would say it may have happened once or twice, not nearly as numerously as they claim. And I would also say that there are a few of the ladies that uses their sexual prowess in order to get an easy job and to get someone else, the boss will assign someone else to perform their duties for them.
How's that? How do they do that?
Well, a perfect example was two of the ladies were polishing their fingernails while the men on the crew were hauling block for them to build a wall. It's one example.
But how did they get to do that?
Well, you get in good with the boss.
And how do they get in good with the
Well,
boss?
whatever it takes.
And what did it take, as far as you know?
I'm not a boss, so really I can't say positively what it took. But I know that there's been sexual, activity among foremen and, the female workers.
And you think that's how they get ahead?
I can't see any other way. It isn't from excellence of job performance.
Consolidation, the company the women work for, refused to answer charges of sexual harassment at their mine in Wheeling. However, they did agree to make a statement. Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Gene Samples.
It has been Consol's policy for many years to provide a workplace for our employees that is free of harassment and affronts to dignity. With 17,000 employees, it's very difficult not to have an odd case occur. In light of the recent publicity that we've received with respect to harassment, we have reaffirmed our existing policy in writing. And we intend to see that there will not be affronts to the dignity of our employees or harassment in any way, and we will enforce that policy.
The company says they didn't know about the hole?
The company says that.
They didn't drill the hole?
They also say that.
And when they found out about it, they fixed it?
They say that too.
So why sue them?
Because that's not the case. That's not the truth. The truth is that the company, we believe, did drill the hole. We believe the company did know of the existence of the hole. And we believe the company employees, that is, the foreman, looked through the hole. So what the company has said, in effect, is not the truth.
In your view, in your eyes, from a legal standpoint, the foremen are the company?
There's no question in my mind about that.
What's the impact of all of this on you today?
Mental anguish.
Oh, yes.
Very upsetting.
Embarrassment.
I like to take acid and put right in their face. I would. Because I just feel like I've been taken advantage of just for their sexual fantasies. I feel like I've been raped. I really do, because only God knows what went through their minds.
And they've taken something away from us that we will never be able to get back.
You can't go anywhere without running into one of them. If you go out to the mall, you run into one of them. You don't know who has looked at you and who hasn't.
That's
and you just feel like covering yourself up, because you really don't know which out of all of the foremen who has looked at you.
This is a small area, and you do constantly run into people. There's over 700 men down there, and that's union, let alone the foreman.
It's over 100 foremen.
These women have suffered. They could never be made whole from what happened to them again. That's one part of it. But a bigger part of it is that I think that women miners and probably women workers in general are starting to understand that while you get rid of a problem, whether it be sex discrimination in hiring or whether it be dealing with sexual harassment on the job, is big dollar settlements. That's what the companies, the big companies, understand. Anything short of that, it's not going to be dealt with.
Last week, the women miners got their settlement. Was it for big dollars? We don't know. One of the conditions imposed by the judge was that the women not disclose the amount.